She was 38 years old, standing in the driveway of a house she had helped pay for, watching her husband marry someone else. Her name was Christine, and in that moment, with string lights glowing above a backyard full of strangers, and a string quartet playing something soft and expensive, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She pulled out her phone, opened the camera app, and pressed record. That single decision, quiet, calculated, deliberate, was the choice that would destroy him. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. Drop a comment and tell us where in the world you're watching from. We have viewers from all 50 states and beyond, and we want to hear from you. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe that patience is the most powerful weapon a person can carry. Because what Christine did over the next 47 days wasn't fueled by rage. It was fueled by something far more dangerous, clarity. Now let's go back to the beginning because this story doesn't start in that driveway. It starts 3 years earlier in a small apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Christine Aldridge sat across from her husband, Derek, at a kitchen table covered in financial documents, both of them trying to figure out how to save a marriage that was quietly bleeding out. Derek was 41 at the time. He worked in commercial real estate, not at the top of the industry but comfortable. He had the kind of confidence that comes from being the tallest person in a medium-sized room. He wore it well. He spoke in a tone that suggested everything had already been decided, and he was simply informing you of the outcome. Christine had loved that about him once. The certainty of him. The way he moved through a room like he already owned it. But over time, that same quality had started to feel less like strength and more like erasure. Like she was a footnote in a story he was writing about himself. Christine had a master's degree in healthcare administration. She was sharp, organized, and the kind of person who read every page of a contract before she signed it. A habit Derek used to tease her about. She had worked for a regional hospital network for 6 years before an opportunity came along that changed everything. A global health consultancy based in Geneva was expanding its operations in West Africa and Southeast Asia. They needed someone with her exact skill set, someone who understood American healthcare infrastructure and could help develop it abroad. The salary was nearly double what she was making. The benefits were extraordinary. And the role came with a housing allowance, a travel stipend, and a 3-year contract. It was the kind of offer that only comes once. She and Derek talked about it for 2 weeks straight. Every night at that kitchen table. Derek said he supported her. He said he was proud of her. He said the money would set them up for life. They could finish paying off the house, build real savings, maybe finally buy that property in Asheville he always talked about. He held her hands across that table and told her to go. He said, "We're a team. What's good for you is good for us." And Christine believed him. She had no reason not to. They had been married for 9 years. She believed in Derek the way you believe in something you've built yourself, completely because you remember every nail. She left for her first overseas posting in the spring. The work was hard and the hours were long. But she was extraordinary at it. She sent money home every month, a fixed transfer without fail to the joint account they shared. Some months it was $4,000. Some months it was more. Over 36 months, she transferred just under $140,000 into that account. She thought Derek was saving it. She thought they were building something. She asked him about it sometimes on their video calls, and he would nod and say things were fine, the account looked good, he was handling everything. She didn't push. She trusted him. That was her one mistake, and it wasn't even really a mistake. It was love, which is the cruelest kind of trap, because you walk into it with your eyes open. What she didn't know was that the joint account had been quietly drained. Not all at once. Slowly. Methodically. The way you boil something without it noticing the heat. Derek had refinanced the house they both owned, and taken out a home equity line of credit against it. He had used that money, along with Christine's transfers, to invest in a private real estate venture with a business partner named Marcus Webb. The venture was not registered in Christine's name. She was not listed as a stakeholder. She had no legal stake in any of it. And the house she had been paying for, had a new loan against it that she knew nothing about. There was something else Derek never told her. Sometime in the second year of Christine's posting abroad, he had started seeing a woman named Laura Standish. Laura was 34, a marketing consultant from Nashville who had relocated to Charlotte for work. She was warm and energetic and completely unaware, at first, that Derek was married. By the time she found out, she had already fallen for him. Derek had a talent for making people feel like the most important person in the room. It was the same talent that had once made Christine feel chosen. Laura eventually convinced herself that Christine had essentially abandoned the marriage by going overseas. That's what Derek told her. He told Laura that Christine had chosen her career over their relationship, that the marriage was over in every way that mattered, and that they were simply waiting for the right time to make it official. Laura believed him. She was not a villain in this story. She was a woman who had been handed a false map and told it was real. By the third year of Christine's contract, things had gone quiet between her and Derek in ways she had started to notice but hadn't yet named. He was slower to return calls. He blamed the time difference. He seemed distracted on video chats. He smiled too quickly when she asked how he was, the way people do when the answer is too complicated to get into. But Christine had a deadline coming. Her contract was ending in 6 weeks, and she was already planning her return. She had decided to come back early. Her organization had given her 2 weeks of personal leave before her official end date. She thought she would surprise Derek. She thought she would come home, walk through the front door, and remind herself what normal felt like. She had bought a bottle of his favorite bourbon at the duty-free in Zurich. She had rehearsed the look on his face when he saw her. She landed at Charlotte Douglas International Airport on a Thursday afternoon in late October. The air smelled like home, that particular American autumn smell of dry leaves and exhaust and fast food a quarter mile from the highway. She rented a car because she didn't want to call for a pickup. The surprise was the whole point. She drove the 40 minutes to their neighborhood in a kind of quiet joy, the radio on low, the windows cracked just enough to feel the cool air. She turned onto their street just as the sun was starting to drop. And that's when she saw it. The house was lit up. White string lights were wrapped around the fence and the old oak tree in the front yard. There were cars parked bumper to bumper along both sides of the street. She could hear music, live music, something with strings. There were people in the backyard visible through the side gate, dressed formally. Women in cocktail dresses, men in suits. She pulled over half a block away and sat very still. For a moment, she thought it might be a party. A birthday. Some event she hadn't been told about. She got out of the car and walked slowly toward the house, not announcing herself, moving on instinct rather than intention. She came around the side gate and looked through the gap in the wood. The backyard had been transformed. There were rows of white chairs. There were flower arrangements on every surface. There was a small arch at the far end, wrapped in ivory roses. And standing beneath that arch, in a charcoal gray suit with an ivory boutonniere, was Derek. Beside him stood a woman in a white dress, Laura Standish. And next to them, a man who appeared to be an officiant, holding an open book, speaking words Christine could not hear from where she stood. Christine stood at that gate for exactly 4 seconds. She counted them later, replaying the memory. 4 seconds of absolute stillness. And then she reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out her phone, and began recording. She did not open the gate. She did not walk inside. She did not call out his name or say a single word. She stood behind that gate and filmed. She filmed the arch, the chairs, the guests, the officiant, and Derek's face. Clear and composed and completely at ease, as he prepared to marry another woman in the backyard of a house that was half hers. She filmed for 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Then she walked back to her rental car, got in, closed the door, and sat in silence for a very long time. She called her sister, Renee, who lived in Raleigh. She didn't say much. She just said, "I need you to come to Charlotte tonight. I need a place to stay and I need the name of a good attorney." Renee, who had always been the more pragmatic of the two sisters, asked only one question. "Are you safe?" Christine said yes. Renee said, "I'll be there in 2 hours. Don't go back to that house. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment right now that says, 'I'm still here,' because this story is just getting started, and what Christine does next is the part that nobody who wronged her ever saw coming. And while you're at it, if you know someone who stayed strong when everything fell apart, share this video with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for each other is say, 'I see you.'" Christine spent that first night in a motel off I-85. She didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed with her laptop open and started building a document. Not an emotional journal. Not a letter she would never send. A legal document. Chronology. She started at the beginning, the date she left for overseas, the date of the first wire transfer, the account number, the amounts. She had kept every receipt, every transfer confirmation, every email between herself and Derek about their finances. She had them saved in a cloud folder she created 2 years earlier, more out of personal habit than suspicion. She was the kind of person who kept records. Derek had never understood that about her. He had always assumed that because she was warm, she was disorganized. He had confused her softness for carelessness. That was his fatal error. By morning, she had a 14-page document. She sent it to Renee, who forwarded it immediately to a family law attorney in Charlotte named Patricia Holt, a woman Renee had used during her own divorce 4 years earlier and trusted completely. Patricia reviewed the document over the weekend. She called Christine on Sunday morning. Her voice was even and professional, but there was an undercurrent of something sharper in it. She said, "Christine, I need you to understand something. What you've sent me is not just a divorce case. This is potentially wire fraud, marital asset concealment, and unauthorized encumbrance of jointly owned property. This is a case with teeth." Christine listened without interrupting. Then she asked one question. "Can we move fast?" Patricia said, "We move as fast as you want to." The first filing happened on a Monday, exactly 4 days after Christine had stood at that side gate watching her husband say vows to another woman. Patricia filed for divorce on grounds of abandonment and filed a separate motion to freeze all marital assets pending an audit of the joint accounts and the home equity line of credit. A process server showed up at the house on a Tuesday morning, right as Derek was leaving for work in his gray Range Rover. Christine wasn't there to see it. She didn't need to be. Derek called her within minutes. She didn't answer. He called 3 more times. Then he sent a text. She read it once, took a screenshot and forwarded it to Patricia. The text said, "Christine, I can explain everything. None of this is what you think. Call me back. We can handle this like adults." She found it interesting that he still believed this was a conversation he could manage. That was the thing about Derek. He had spent so long being the smartest person in his own story that he had genuinely forgotten to account for hers. What Patricia uncovered over the following 2 weeks was methodical and damning. The home equity line of credit totaled $220,000. Derek had drawn it down over 18 months in increments small enough to avoid triggering automatic bank alerts. The money had gone into a joint business account with Marcus Webb, his investment partner. That account had then been used to purchase 2 commercial properties in Gastonia, properties that were appreciating. Neither Christine's name nor her knowledge had been part of any of it. Patricia brought in a forensic accountant named Robert Childs, who specialized in marital asset cases. Robert spent 4 days going through every account, every transfer, every LLC filing. When he emerged from those 4 days, he had a report that was 61 pages long. He told Patricia, "This is one of the cleaner concealment cases I've seen, which just means he was careful. But careful isn't invisible." The Gastonia properties were the real discovery. Derek and Marcus had formed an LLC, registered in North Carolina, 9 months after Christine left for overseas. The LLC held both properties, which were currently valued at just under $900,000 combined. Because the LLC had been capitalized partly with funds from the joint account, funds that included Christine's overseas transfers, Patricia argued successfully to the court that Christine had an equitable interest in those assets. Derek's attorney, a competent but slightly overmatched lawyer named Stuart Finch, pushed back hard. He argued that the transfers had been made voluntarily into a joint account and that Christine had shown no interest in how the money was deployed. Patricia responded with documentation. Every email Christine had sent asking about their savings. Every time Derek had replied that things were fine. She built a paper wall around Derek, and every month, she added another brick. Marcus Webb had not known about the divorce proceedings until a court notice landed in his LLC's registered office. He called Derek in what was described later, by someone who overheard the call, as a very loud and very unpleasant conversation. Marcus had not known the full picture of where the startup capital had come from. He was not a villain either. He was a man who had trusted his business partner, and was now staring at the possibility of having 2 commercial properties tied up in a divorce proceeding. He quietly hired his own attorney. Laura, meanwhile, had learned the truth in pieces. A mutual acquaintance of hers, someone who had been at the backyard ceremony and seen Christine standing at the gate recording on her phone, had told her the story. Laura had confronted Derek. What followed between them was not part of Christine's story. But Laura walked away from Derek within 2 weeks of that backyard ceremony, quietly and with minimal communication. She had never been Christine's enemy. She had been a casualty, collateral damage in a deception she hadn't chosen. The hearing was set for a Friday in January, in a Mecklenburg County courtroom. Derek had been served, responded, and appeared with Stuart Finch. Christine sat beside Patricia at the plaintiff's table. She wore a dark navy blazer and a composed expression that gave away nothing. She had been through 3 years in international healthcare consulting, managing crises across multiple time zones with incomplete information and enormous stakes. A divorce courtroom in Charlotte, North Carolina, was, in the most specific sense, nothing she hadn't already survived in miniature. She had simply never expected to be the one walking into it. Derek glanced at her once when he entered. Just once. She didn't look back. The proceeding was not dramatic in the way courtroom dramas suggest. There was no shouting, no revelation that caused the gallery to gasp. It was paperwork and argument and Robert Childs presenting his 61-page report in a clear, measured voice while Stuart Finch made objections that Patricia dismissed with the patience of someone who had done this for 22 years. The judge, a careful, unhurried woman named the Honorable Sandra Reeves, asked precise questions and made notes. What happened in that courtroom over 4 hours was the slow, methodical dismantling of a version of events Derek had spent 3 years constructing. The story he had told, that Christine had chosen her career over their marriage, that the finances had been managed in good faith, that the LLC was a business decision unrelated to marital assets, was taken apart piece by Patricia Holt, using Christine's own documents, her transfer records, her emails, and Robert Childs' forensic report. By the time Patricia finished, Stuart Finch looked like a man who had arrived to a board meeting with the wrong presentation. He did his best. But Derek had given him a story that couldn't withstand the weight of Christine's records. Judge Reeves did not issue her final ruling that day. These things take time. But the preliminary orders she issued were clear. The marital home would be appraised. The LLC's assets would remain frozen pending a full equitable distribution hearing. Derek would have no access to the joint account or the home equity line without court approval. Stuart Finch asked that Derek be allowed to remain in the home during proceedings. Patricia pointed out that Christine was the one who had been away for 3 years and had no other local residence. Judge Reeves looked at both attorneys over her reading glasses for a moment that felt longer than it was, and then she ordered Derek to vacate within 30 days. Christine moved back into her house in February. She walked through the front door on a cold Saturday morning, Renee beside her, carrying 2 bags. The backyard was bare. The string lights were gone. The white chairs and the arch and the ivory roses had been cleared away as if the whole thing had been a dream. She stood in the kitchen for a while, touching the counter, the cabinet handles, the light switch. 3 years of someone else's life had passed through this space. She could feel it, but the walls were still the walls she knew. The light came through the windows the same way it always had. It was still her house. The final divorce settlement took another 5 months. In the end, Christine received the marital home free and clear, a cash settlement representing her equitable share of the LLC assets, full reimbursement of the unauthorized home equity line proceeds drawn from joint funds, and a structured payment covering her documented transfers over the 3-year period. The total came to more than $500,000. Derek kept his car, his personal savings, and a debt to Marcus Webb that would take him years to untangle. He also kept the knowledge of what he had done, which, Christine later reflected, was probably its own kind of punishment. She did not celebrate. She didn't post anything on social media. She didn't call anyone who didn't already know. She went back to work. Her consultancy had offered her a new regional role, based in Atlanta, which she accepted. She drove down I-85 on a clear spring morning, her car packed with the things that mattered, the Charlotte skyline in her rearview mirror getting smaller and then disappearing entirely. Renee asked her once, in the middle of all of it, how she had stayed so calm. Christine thought about it for a long time before she answered. She said, "I wasn't calm. I was just quiet. There's a difference." She said that the moment she stood at that gate and chose to record instead of react, she had understood something clearly. That the most dangerous thing she could do was feel the wrong feelings in the wrong order. That grief was real and rage was real, but they had their time and their place, and this wasn't it. This was the time for documentation, for precision, for patience. This was the time to be the person in the room who already knew the outcome. And here is what Derek never understood. Not when he was building his LLC with another man's wife's money. Not when he was rehearsing vows in a backyard decorated with her equity. Not even when he sat across a courtroom from her and watched his story come apart. He never understood that Christine had always been the most capable person in their marriage. He had just never paid close enough attention to notice. She had been paying attention the whole time. So here we are, and this is where I want to ask you something directly. If the story moved you, if you've ever been underestimated by someone who was supposed to be your partner, if you've ever had to be quiet when everything in you wanted to scream, if you've ever had to play a long game when all you wanted was for someone to see what was happening, then this channel is for you. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below telling me, what do you think Christine's strongest moment was? Was it standing at the gate and choosing to record? Was it making that call to Renee? Was it walking into that courtroom and sitting down without flinching? Tell me in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone who is in the middle of their own quiet battle and doesn't know yet that patience is power, share this video with them. Right now. Because sometimes the most important thing one person can do for another is simply say, "You are not alone, and you are not finished." Christine Aldridge is not a real person, but her story is real in every way that matters.